Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm really glad you're joining us today because we are about to really get into the heart of international business strategy. If you've ever wondered, how does a company actually do it? How do they take that first step or maybe even a big leap onto the global stage? Well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into the world of international business entry modes. We've pulled together some really insightful sources for this deep dive. We're particularly drawing from International Business O2.pdf, which does a great job laying out the key strategies companies use. And our goal isn't just to list these strategies, it's to cut through the complexity. We want to give you a really clear, actionable understanding of these choices. So you walk away truly well-informed with a solid grasp of the blueprints for global expansion.
Absolutely. And, what's really insightful here is understanding these aren't just dry business terms. These entry modes, they're fundamental strategic blueprints. They're like roadmaps for growth and maybe even more importantly, for managing risk. For any business looking beyond its home borders, picking the right entry mode is, well, it's foundational. It's often the decision that makes or breaks success internationally. It affects everything: market share, profitability, sustainability. Each choice has ripples throughout the whole company.
That makes perfect sense. Every big global move starts with a really carefully thought out decision. And before a company even thinks about how to get into a new market, there's that fundamental question, when? So let's shift focus to that first critical point, the timing of entry a foreign market. Our source material really highlights this, introducing the concept of early entry.
Indeed, it does. And the source defines early entry very clearly. It's when an international business gets into a foreign market before other foreign firms really establish themselves. This timing isn't random. It's a deliberate move to grab what are known as first mover advantages. So the big question is, what are these advantages, really, and how do companies use them? Well, being early often gives a firm this unique chance to preemptively capture significant market share. Think about it. Demand is just starting up. Competition is low. An early entrant can become the go-to choice, building loyalty before rivals even show up. And beyond just sales, this early presence lets a company build really powerful brand recognition. Think of brands that basically became the product category in a market because they got there first. They stamp their identity on consumers' minds, makes it much harder for latecomers. Plus, getting in early often means you can secure vital resources or lock down the best distribution channels. This could be exclusive deals with local suppliers, getting first dibs on skilled workers, or grabbing prime retail spots or logistics hubs. Things that become way more expensive or just unavailable later on when everyone else piles in. These secured assets then act as pretty big barriers for other foreign companies trying to enter later. This kind of proactive positioning lets the first mover sort of set the rules for that market, influencing customer expectations, pricing, even how regulations develop.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about showing up first, it's about what you do with that lead, laying the groundwork. I can imagine, say, a tech firm entering an emerging market with a new payment app. Getting in early lets them sign up millions of users, sure, but maybe they also work with local banks, shape the regulations, they build up this huge infrastructure, tons of user data. Creates a massive advantage, right? But I guess there must be a downside. Are there risks to being the pioneer?
That's a really crucial point. It definitely underscores the complexity here. While the source focuses on the advantages, it's vital to remember that pioneering, well, it comes with significant risks and costs. Early entrants often have to spend a lot on just educating the market about a new product. That can be expensive, time-consuming. They might pour money into, unproven technologies or business models that just don't catch on. Big losses there. And then there's figuring out unfamiliar regulations, cultural issues, without anyone else's mistakes to learn from. They're the ones making the first costly errors, learning the hard lessons, which actually can sometimes pave the way for fast followers to come in later with a better strategy and less risk. So yeah, the rewards can be huge, but blazing that trail costs a lot. You need deep pockets and, frankly, a tolerance for uncertainty.
That's a great perspective. It really shows that balance between opportunity and risk.
Yeah.
Okay, so once a company figures out the timing, the next massive question is how. And our sources, especially that PDF we mentioned, lay out this really comprehensive toolkit, 8 distinct ways to enter international business. Though, wait, let me recheck that list. It's exporting, licensing, franchising, turnkey project, mergers and acquisitions, joint venture, and wholly owned subsidiary. Right, 7 main categories. You mentioned the source sometimes lists mergers and acquisitions, and then acquisitions and mergers separately.
Yes, good catch. The source does list them that way, which can seem a bit redundant. For clarity in understanding the strategy, which is really about combining with or buying another company, we'll treat mergers and acquisitions, or M&A, as one broad category. It covers both merging and buying outright. So yes, 7 core strategies we'll explore.
Okay, perfect. So the 7 key modes are 1, exporting, 2, licensing, 3, franchising, 4, turnkey project, 5, mergers and acquisitions, M&A, 6, joint venture, and 7, wholly owned subsidiary. These aren't just random options, right? They represent different levels of commitment, risk, control.
Exactly. If you connect this to the bigger picture, these 7 modes really exist on a spectrum. At one end, you've got strategies with lower capital needs, less direct control. Think exporting. At the other end, you have modes demanding huge investment but giving you maximum control, like a wholly owned subsidiary. The really crucial thing isn't just memorizing the names, it's understanding the mechanics of each one. Who are the players? What are the implications? This is where understanding the details really matters, especially for those key distinctions.
All right, let's unpack this journey then. Starting with number 1, exporting. This often seems like the most straightforward way in, maybe the first step for many companies testing international waters. Basically, just selling stuff made here to customers somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Extending your reach without necessarily setting up shop abroad. But even here, our source points out some key differences in how companies export.
Precisely. The source outlines 2 main forms, and the difference is really important for understanding a company's strategy. First, there's passive exporting. This is when a company gets unsolicited orders from buyers in other countries. Think of it as reactive. The company isn't actively looking for international sales, the demand just kind of finds them, maybe through their website or a referral. The key characteristic here is that wait-and-see approach. They're not investing heavily in international marketing or specific export teams. The implications? Well, it's lower risk, obviously, less strategic commitment needed. It's a way to dip a toe in, respond to organic demand, but it usually doesn't lead to planned significant growth internationally. It's acknowledging interest, not really driving it.
That makes sense. Just waiting for the phone to ring, essentially. So how does that compare to a more deliberate approach?
Well, that brings us to active exporting. This is totally different and involves a deliberate, proactive strategy, actively seeking out and targeting specific foreign markets. The goal here is clear. Expand export sales significantly, systematically. It's not about accidental orders. It's about identifying opportunities, putting resources in, executing a plan to create demand abroad. And the strategic difference is huge. Active exporting demands way more resources. You need market research, dedicated international marketing, maybe setting up an export department or sales teams. You might need to adapt products for local regulations or tastes, deal with complex logistics, tariffs, all that. So yes, it's more investment, more complex operationally, but the potential for planned, sustainable growth, deep market penetration, building long-term relationships, it's much, much higher. That difference between reactive and proactive, it's fundamental in international strategy. Fulfilling an order versus building a global presence.
That clarity is really helpful. Okay, moving beyond selling from afar, let's talk about licensing. This seems like a clever way for a company to use its intellectual assets, its smart ideas, without maybe taking on all the risk of manufacturing or selling directly overseas. The core idea is a domestic company leasing the right to use its intellectual property to a foreign manufacturer.
That's a great way to put it. And when we talk about intellectual property here, what exactly are we leasing? The source points to a range of these intangible assets, often things the company has spent a lot developing. We're talking about things like patents for inventions, proprietary technology or know-how, copyrights for software or creative works, trademarks, so brand names and logos, even specific manufacturing processes. These are valuable assets, and the deal. It's done for a fee. Now, this fee can vary. It might be a lump sum upfront, or more often, it involves royalties, ongoing payments, usually a percentage of the licensee's sales. That gives the original company a steady income stream. Sometimes it's a mix of both. And understanding the players is absolutely key here, especially for grasping the dynamics. You've got 2 main parties. The manufacturer in the home country, the one who owns the IP and is leasing it out, that's the licensor. They hold the license. The manufacturer in the foreign country, the one getting the rights to use the IP to make and sell stuff, that's the licensee. They receive the license. Knowing licensor versus licensee is crucial.
Okay, licensor owns it, licensee uses it. So based on those roles, what does this arrangement mean for the licensor in terms of, say, control over what happens in the foreign market and the financial risk they're taking?
That's exactly the core trade-off to understand. For the licensor, yeah, it generally means less direct control compared to setting up their own factory or actively managing exports. You're essentially trusting another company with your technology or brand. That can lead to issues, maybe with quality control or brand image if the licensee doesn't maintain standards or their goals shift. But the flip side is a big one, significantly less direct financial risk. The licensee is the one putting up the capital, dealing with operational costs, market ups and downs in that foreign country. The licensor avoids that huge upfront investment, the headaches of managing foreign staff, navigating local regulations directly. So it's a strategy for relatively quick, low capital expansion. You generate revenue from assets you already have without needing a major physical presence abroad, leveraging assets for reach.
Right, trading control for lower risk and faster entry. That makes sense. Now, closely related, and something we see everywhere, is franchising. You think about fast food chains, hotels, coffee shops, gyms. They're often franchises, right? This sets up a similar but distinct structure. An independent operator, the franchisee, runs business using the name and system of another company, the franchisor.
Exactly. Franchising is incredibly powerful, especially for scaling successful consumer-facing businesses globally. Let's break down its mechanics. Like licensing, identifying the players is key. You have the franchisee, that's the independent person or company operating the business locally. They take on the day-to-day running and local market risk. And you have the franchisor. That's the main company, the owner of the successful concept, the brand, the system being used. And yes, like licensing, the franchisee pays a fee, usually an upfront franchise fee plus ongoing royalties, often a percentage of their sales. But what makes franchising really different is what the franchisor provides. It goes way beyond just IP. Our source details these specific services, and this is important. The franchisor gives the rights to use valuable trademarks, so the franchisee instantly gets a recognized brand. Huge advantage. They also provide a detailed operating system. This is like a proven blueprint, how to make the product, how to serve customers, marketing plans, sometimes even store layout and design. The franchise benefits massively from the franchisor's established product or service reputation, built-in trust, and quality perception. And maybe the biggest differentiator is the continuous support system. This isn't just a one-time deal. It often includes extensive training for staff, help with site selection, national or global advertising campaigns, access to supply chains, ongoing operational advice. This support minimizes the franchisee's risk and helps ensure a consistent customer experience everywhere. So the balance is, the franchisor expands fast with less capital by using local investment, and the franchise gets a proven business in a box with a known brand and lots of support. It's a really symbiotic relationship for global brand growth.
That continuous support system really does sound like the key difference. A much more involved relationship than licensing. Okay, let's shift gears now to something usually on a much bigger scale, often involving huge construction or industrial projects. The turnkey project. The name turnkey kind of suggests, right? You just turn the key and it works. Ready to go. So in international business, this means a contractor handles absolutely everything for a complex project.
Exactly. The defining feature of a turnkey project is its total comprehensiveness and the end result. A facility ready for immediate use. The scope is truly from start to finish. The contractor takes full responsibility for every single phase. That all aspects part is key. The source lists the contractor's responsibilities explicitly: planning, feasibility, site selection, design, engineering, specs, construction, building, installation, and delivery, testing, commissioning, handover, everything. And the critical outcome, the defining point, is that the project is ready for use immediately after completion. The client gets a fully operational facility without having had to manage the incredibly complex process themselves. Think about building, say, a giant chemical plant or a power station, or even a complex hospital in another country. The technical expertise, the coordination, the risk management required is immense. For a client, maybe a government or a company without that specific know-how or local knowledge, the turnkey model is perfect. It puts all that complexity onto the specialist contractor. One point of contact, one responsible party, delivering a finished working facility. It's a very specialized entry mode, usually for huge, complex infrastructure projects.
That sounds like a massive undertaking for the contractor, but a very clear outcome for the client. Okay, now moving up the scale in terms of commitment, investment, and definitely control, let's talk about mergers and acquisitions, M&A. These feel like much more direct, high-stakes ways to enter a market, either joining forces with a foreign company or just buying them outright, getting a big footprint fast.
Indeed. M&A represents a significant leap in commitment. Our source describes this dual approach. On one hand, a domestic company might strategically merge with a foreign one. In a true merger, two companies combine, maybe forming a new entity, maybe one absorbing the other. It's usually more of a combination of equals, strategically aligned. On the other hand, and often more common for market entry, is the acquisition. Here, the domestic company purchases the foreign company. This means the acquiring company gains ownership and control over the target. The target often becomes a subsidiary or gets fully integrated. Acquisition implies one company taking over another, and the source gives a very precise definition for international acquisition. It's when a company buys a business in another country. Simple as that, but the implications are huge. Why do companies do this? The source lists several key strategic reasons. To expand into new markets very quickly, basically leapfrogging the slow process of building from scratch. To gain immediate access to an existing customer base, along with their sales channels and brand loyalty. And, often quite importantly, to reduce competition by taking a rival off the board, consolidating market power.
Okay, so the why is clear speed, access, less competition. But buying a whole company in another country sounds incredibly complex. What are some of the practical hurdles involved beyond just agreeing on a price?
Oh, it's incredibly complex. You're absolutely right. It's far more than just signing a check. Before any deal happens, there's exhaustive due diligence, combing through the target's finances, legal situation, operations, checking for hidden problems or liabilities. It's meticulous. Then there's valuation, figuring out what the company is actually worth. That involves looking at assets, yes, but also future potential, market conditions, potential synergies. It can get very complicated. And after the deal, that's often where the hardest work starts. Integration, trying to merge different IT systems, supply chains, HR policies. And the big one, corporate cultures. Clashing cultures are a major reason M&As fail. Different ways of working, communicating, it causes huge friction. Plus, you have to navigate regulatory approvals in different countries. It needs a lot of legal expertise. So yeah, M&A has this immediate dramatic impact. But it's high risk because of the cost and these integration nightmares. High potential reward too, though, and maximum control compared to many other modes.
Wow, integration sounds like a minefield. Okay, shifting from full takeover to more collaborative approaches, let's look at the joint venture, or IJV. This seems like a strategy companies use when things are complex, risky, or maybe they need local expertise, sharing the load, essentially.
Yes, the IJV is all about partnership, and knowing the full form is useful. IJV stands for International Joint Venture. The source defines it very clearly. A partnership between two or more businesses, and crucially, they must be from different countries. That's the international part. And the two or more highlights the collaboration. Why form an IJV? The source lists the main goals explicitly. To share resources. This could be capital, technology, specialized knowledge, even access to local networks. To share risks. Entering a new market is risky. An IJV spreads that financial and operational risk among the partners. And to achieve a common goal that might be too big, too expensive, or too difficult for one company to tackle alone. This model can be really powerful. It lets companies combine strengths, like a foreign firm might have advanced tech and money, while the local partner brings deep understanding of the local market, the culture, regulations, distribution. That local knowledge is often gold. IJVs can be particularly useful in markets with tricky regulations or where foreign ownership is restricted. A local partner can unlock doors.
Sharing resources and risks makes a lot of sense. But partnerships can be tricky too, right? What are some potential downsides or challenges companies face in an IJV?
Absolutely. Partnerships always have complexities. IJVs offer lots of benefits, but the challenges are real. A major one is potential conflict between partners. They might have different goals, different management styles, different ideas about how quickly they should see profits. That causes friction. Control and decision-making can be tough, especially if ownership isn't 50-50 or if they just disagree on the venture's direction. Protecting your own technology or trade secrets can also be a concern when you're sharing so closely. And even cultural differences between the partner companies themselves can make communication and collaboration difficult, quite apart from the market's culture. So successful IJVs really need careful partner selection, very clear agreements on governance and goals, and a whole lot of trust and ongoing communication. But when they work, they offer a great balance of risk, resources, and market access.
That need for trust and clear agreements sounds critical. Okay, let's wrap up our tour of entry modes with the one that represents the absolute highest level of commitment and control. The wholly owned subsidiary. This sounds like the all-in strategy, setting up your own operation entirely in the foreign market, taking full responsibility.
That's exactly right. It's the peak of market commitment for firms wanting deep penetration and total strategic freedom. The definition is straightforward but vital. A wholly owned subsidiary is a company that is completely owned by another company, which we call the parent company. The defining feature, the absolute key differentiator, is that the parent company has full control over everything. Strategy, finances, operations, HR, marketing, all of it. Complete, undivided control. And it's worth clarifying that term. You hear subsidiary and wholly owned subsidiary. All wholly owned subsidiaries are subsidiaries, but not all subsidiaries are wholly owned. Some might have minority shareholders or be part of a joint venture structure we just discussed. Wholly owned means specifically 100% ownership by the parent. No sharing of control.
Okay, 100% ownership, 100% control. So what does that actually mean in practice for the parent company? You mentioned it's a double-edged sword earlier. What are the upsides and downsides?
It absolutely is a double-edged sword. Let's connect it to the big picture. The huge upside is complete strategic alignment. Your subsidiary does exactly what Global HQ wants. No partner conflicts, no disagreements on direction. Unified vision. It also offers the best protection for your valuable technology and intellectual property. You're not sharing secrets with outsiders, reducing risk of leaks. And of course, the parent company gets to keep all the profits generated by the subsidiary. Maximum return on investment, potentially. You also get direct control over quality, brand image, customer experience, ensuring consistency everywhere. But that maximum control comes with maximum risk and cost. Establishing a wholly owned subsidiary usually requires the highest capital investment of any mode. The parent pays for everything, setup, infrastructure, ongoing operations. It also means full exposure to all the risks in that foreign market financial, operational, political, economic swings. If things go wrong, the parent bears the full brunt. And there are big challenges in managing a foreign operation, directly understanding local laws, cultural nuances in managing people, developing local managers. So despite the huge risks and costs for companies seeking deep market presence, long-term advantage, and that total control, the wholly owned subsidiary is often the ultimate goal. It signals a massive long-term commitment.
Okay, so what does this all mean when we pull back and look at the whole picture? We've gone through these 7 distinct ways companies enter international markets. It's really clear they're not just separate choices, are they? They feel like points on a spectrum of engagement, each with its own mix of risk, reward, control, and investment. And as you listen, I think it's really useful to consider those trade-offs. How much control do you want versus how much risk can you handle? How much capital do you have versus how quickly do you need to get in?
Precisely. And doing a quick comparison really highlights these trade-offs. Think about exporting again, especially passive exporting. Lowest control, generally lowest financial risk, minimal investment, but limited presence, limited influence. Then jump to the other end. Wholly owned subsidiary, highest investment, full risk exposure, but rewarded with complete control and strategic autonomy. Or compare licensing and franchising. Both use IP and brands, right? But licensing is often more hands-off, just granting rights for a fee. Franchising involves that whole operating system, the brand standards, the continuous support, much deeper operational involvement, aiming for a consistent global experience. Even a turnkey project, while requiring huge expertise, might just be a single defined contract, whereas a joint venture or an M&A implies an ongoing operational presence with continuous strategic decisions and financial ties. So there's no single best way. It's always situational. It completely depends on the company's specific goals, its appetite for risk, its resources, and importantly, the unique nature of the target market, its regulations, its culture, its competitive landscape. Understanding these fundamental differences, we've talked about the what, the who, the why. For each mode, that's what's key. It's not just memorizing terms, it's grasping the strategic logic behind the choices. That's what lets you really understand international business in action.
And just like that, we've covered a lot of ground. From that crucial first decision about when to enter, thinking about early entry, first mover advantages, and those pioneering risks, all the way through the diverse toolkit of 7 key entry modes, we've unpacked exporting, licensing, franchising, turnkey projects, M&A, joint ventures, and wholly owned subsidiaries. A whole spectrum of strategies. So, to bring it all back home, our goal with this deep dive wasn't just to give you a list. We really wanted to provide a clear, practical understanding of the what, the who, and the really important why behind each of these methods, based on our source material. We genuinely hope this has been a valuable shortcut for you, giving you a clear and thorough grasp of these critical strategic choices in international business.
And as we finish up, maybe this leaves you with an interesting question to think about. Considering how fast technology is changing, how global politics are shifting, how interconnected everything is, which of these entry modes do you think might be becoming more common today? Or maybe less common? And why might that be? Or perhaps thinking about the challenges, which mode do you feel presents the most unique, maybe underestimated difficulties for a company going global? And on the flip side, which one do you think offers the greatest, perhaps untapped opportunity in the world right now? We really encourage you to keep that curiosity going. Apply this knowledge as you see businesses operate around the world. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring and keep digging deeper.